everybody, and welcome to the weekly scopes from the 6th to the 12th of July. Hi everybody, and welcome to this week's weekly scopes. If you've heard this before, you can skip, but this is just the intro on how I formulate these astrology weekly readings. I use astrology and my intuition to give you advice how you can practically use the knowledge of the stars and the planets and apply them to your life. So my weekly scopes are all based on GMT time and on Vedic Constellational Astrology. So now I'm just going to explain what Vedic Constellation Astrology is and how it differs from Western astrology. So the precession of the equinox is sort of like something that happens in astronomy and astrology, where the Earth's axis undergoes a slow circular motion over 26,000 years, and basically this means that this motion causes a shift in the position of the equinoxes and also the calculation Vedic and Western astrologies use. So around 2,000 years ago, the tropical and sidereal Vedic astrology signs of astrology were aligned in the same position. So if the sun was in Scorpio in Vedic astrology, it was also in the constellation of Scorpio in Western astrology. But because of the precession of the equinoxes, this has caused a gradual westward sort of like drift of the tropical Western signs. So basically these signs and the Western signs shift 1 degree with every 72 years. So as a result of this ongoing shift, when Western astrology says the sun is in the constellation of Pisces, it's typically in the constellation of Aquarius. Still, this is because the degree, orb and the date for Western and Vedic astrology are 24 degrees, 24 days apart. So in Western astrology, the sun enters the constellation of Pisces around the 19th of February each year, but actually the sun doesn't arrive into the constellation of Pisces until the 13th to the 15th of March each year, and Vedic astrology takes this into account because it's based on the fixed star positions, and Vedic astrologers use sidereal calculations. So as a result, Vedic astrology takes into account the actual positions of the constellations in the sky at any given time, and also considers the precession of the equinox, adjusting for the shift in the position of the equinoxes over time. But in terms of Western astrology follows the tropical zodiac, which is based on the seasons rather than fixed star positions. Western astrologers also do not directly account for the precession of the equinox in their calculations as well, so this results in slightly different calculations and interpretations that are given whether we're using Western astrology or Vedic astrology. So yeah, as I said, Western astrology uses specific dates, so every year, regardless of where the sun actually is at the sky, the sun moves into Pisces around the 19th of February. So yeah, this discrepancy, this misalignment between the tropical zodiac and the actual positions of the constellations has led to a discrepancy between Vedic astrology and Western astrology. So I consider the actual where the sun and the moon are and where Mars and Venus are at any given time, and this is how I formulate these sort of like weekly scopes. So yeah, thanks for listening to this, and let's dive into this week's weekly scope. Okay, so now I'm just going to explain what parallels and contra parallels are in astrology, because I use them in my chart interpretation. So declination in astrology is the measure of how far a celestial body is, such as the sun, whether it's either north or south of the celestial equator. And the celestial equator is an imaginary line in the sky above the Earth's equator, which us astrologers use in our interpretation. So parallels happen when two planets are on the same declination, either both planets are on the north side side, or either both planets are on the south side, and this alignment increases the influence of the involved planets. So it's similar to a conjunction aspect, as it amplifies their energy, making the effects of the planets more pronounced. Contraparallels, on the other hand, happen when two planets are on the same declination, but one is in the north and one is in the south. So this alignment creates tension, which is similar to an opposition aspect, and it can lead to conflict, challenges and inner struggles between the energies of the planets involved. So contraparallels highlight areas of friction or contrast in our lives, urging us to find balance between the opposing forces at play. When transiting parallels and contraparallels happen, they can sort of trigger significant events, shifting consciousness and periods of intense growth and transformation. So I look at these aspects closely during chart analysis to understand how planetary energies interact and influence each other during a specific time frame, to pinpoint key periods for personal development, relationship dynamics or career shifts, and other shifts like karmic shifts and stuff like that. Because I just find using contraparallels and parallels gives me more depth in interpretation, so I use them. So contraparallels and parallels in astrology serve as markers for potential challenges or breakthroughs, guiding us towards more self-awareness, love, acceptance, understanding, forgiveness for ourselves and others, and shifts in consciousness and growth. So overall, just a shift in our mindset if we allow for it. So parallels and contraparallels just kind of provide valuable insights into the complexities and nuances of the astrological interactions between planetary movements. So yeah, that's the end of what contraparallels and parallels are. So this week we've just got one. Can you imagine that? Just the one influence governing us this week. And so that's Jupiter making a contraparallel to Pluto, which is the same as opposition, right? So yeah, this entered on the 29th of June. It's exact at 2:55 a.m. on the 11th of July and leaves us on the 3rd of October. So whoa, it's lasting us about 3 to 4 months, obviously being strong and then not being so strong as it moves apart, right? But it just means that Jupiter and Pluto are on the same side of the astrological atmosphere, right? So Jupiter's in Gemini and Pluto's in Capricorn when this starts. So this week we experience an astrological tug of war between our need to grow and our need to transform. This declination creates tension between our big ideas and deep-seated power struggles and, our routines and habits. It gives us and wants us to level up our energy, up our game, and it can be quite an intense energy. So in Vedic astrology, this represents Guru, Jupiter and Yama, Pluto. Basically, the guru of knowledge confronting the lord of the underworld, so it's asking us to go deep into ourselves, and this is a powerful opportunity to grow through destruction, right? So positively, it gives us an improved ability to see the bigger truth behind power and our relationships and behaviours, right? It can lead to intellectual breakthroughs that can help us transform our life path or just our day-to-day habits, right? Which in turn, transforms our life direction, right? It allows us to experience personal growth through challenging situations. So there can be a lot of deep, intense, emotional power struggles, especially in shared and joint resources this week and the way that we communicate. But it's a perfect energy for research, investigation, and uncovering hidden knowledge. So ultimately, this energy is perfect for research, investigation, and uncovering hidden knowledge, and secrets may come to the surface. In terms of the owls, the challenges, there can be power struggles with authority figures or from within our own psyche, our mind, So there can be a tendency to intellectually obsess or be extreme in our ideology, the things that we believe in. So you may discover a fact, or you may believe in a religion or spiritual practice, and you can just be too extreme in thinking everyone should think the way that you do, but we're all on our different paths, and we should respect that, and respect our own boundaries there, but also others and their boundary to process things and to learn things and to believe in the things they want to believe in without enforcing it. And enforcing our boundaries is other people are trying to enforce their rules on us excessively as well. So this of overextending ourselves in the name of transformation and change, we can just get obsessive, like, I need to do this now, The best change comes over time and when we take a slow and steady approach, right? There can also be philosophical conflicts with established systems, The best use of this energy is to channel it into deep learning and research, rather than power struggles, being jealous and stuff like that. Using Jupiter's expansive growth wisdom to deal with Pluto's intense transformations with grace. This transit is good for academic projects, spiritual quests, and healing deep-seated issues, psychologically, karmically, and spiritually. It reveals where our belief systems, represented by Jupiter, need death and rebirth, represented by Pluto. You may find yourself questioning everything you thought you knew, especially regarding family traditions, authority, religion, spiritual practices, success, and what you consider to be truth or what you are told you should think to be true. Karmically, this aspect represents an astrological checkpoint where your soul must reconcile between faith and power. Past life patterns related to knowledge, misuse, or power imbalances may resurface, come up, and this is the universe asking, are you expanding, growing, changing your consciousness in alignment with your higher purpose, or are you stuck in old power struggles, behaviours, relationships and thoughts, right? Spiritually and esoterically, Jupiter contra Pluto represents the initiation of the seeker, us going out there and finding information, leaving behind what we're told to just do, and actually taking the time to research and to explore, whether it's books, podcasts, videos, meeting people, seeking out mentors, going to therapy, seeking the deeper meanings in life, entry into the mystery traditions. Pluto is all about the unknown, the things that we don't see, uncertainty, death, what we see as death, and it correlates with the dark night of the soul that comes before enlightenment, where we have to go through the anxious feelings, depressions and mental health issues, so emotional imbalances, the spiritual kind of blindness. It sort of like represents this week the hermetic principle, as above so below. So what's going on within us this week may be sown in our experiences, and ultimately our inner transformation sort of like intensely manifesting outwardly this week. So the things we try to hide from can be sown up in other people's actions and words. We may not be able to hide from our emotions this week, and on the other hand, our outer circumstances this week is a reflection, a mirror to our inner evolution. So if you've been working on your growth and balance and not fearing change and the unknown, have been working on changing your mindset and respecting other people's values and giving them the space to think what they want, then this week is just going to mirror that in your experiences, right? But if you have not been doing that, then your experiences can mirror what you need to work on. So this week you can ask yourself, where am I clinging to outdated beliefs that need transforming, and what areas of my life am I afraid to be open to my own power and wisdom? What truth am I avoiding because it would require me to change? How can I use astrological tension to catapult, to push me, my spiritual and intellectual growth and take them to the next level, And remember, this transit isn't just about surviving the intensity, it's about using it as rocket motivation for your evolution, for your growth. The universe is basically saying go big or go home, but make sure you're doing the shadow work too. You're confronting what needs confronting and getting outside of your comfort zone, So my mantras and guidance for this week are based on the majority of energies that you have in your natal chart. So some of you may have natal charts that are dominant in more than one energy. You may have your rising sign, your sun sign, and your moon sign all in different energies. You may have aspects to different planets. So ultimately this could mean you have some planets that are in fire, some in water signs, some in earth signs. So for example, if you have most of your planets in Aries, Scorpio and Capricorn, read the mantras for all of these signs. And if you have all your planets mostly in Taurus, read the mantra for Taurus, but you may also want to read for Libra because Venus rules Taurus and Libra, right? So yeah. So Aries, Mars is, forming the 10th sextil to Chiron in your sign. So old wounds around self-expression demand attention. Transform frustration into healing by channeling your fiery energy into confident action rather than avoidance. This is your astrological invitation to reclaim your power in situations that require courage. Taurus, Venus in your sign forms a harmonious aspect with Saturn, Neptune and Pluto this week, creating a perfect storm, recipe of stable, spiritual and transformative energy. So embrace, so be open to these aspects by creating something beautiful that requires both patience and sensuality, while allowing yourself to experience the sacred in ordinary pleasures. Gemini, Mercury forms a creative quintile with Uranus, while the sun is also in your sign, making a flowing trine to the north node. So this activates your innovative thinking, and you can sort of like align yourself with your future path if you're open to, writing down the things you need to do so, or continue what you're doing if you're already building on that, Trust in those lightning bolt insights about emotional patterns and allow your authentic self-expression to flow toward humanitarian ideals. Cancer, with Mercury in your sign forming magical aspects to both Uranus and the moon's north node, your emotional intelligence is being astrologically upgraded. Your intuitive communication is evolving to better express your spiritual purpose. Trust that those where did that come from moments are, astrological, spiritual, universal breadcrumbs, ideas leading you towards your destiny. Leo, Mars in your sign creates tension with the wounded healer. Chiron, bringing up past pain around assertion and identity. The universe is essentially saying feel the fear and do it anyway. Your healing journey requires facing moments where your confidence was shattered and reclaiming your power, especially in situations requiring self-expression. Virgo, as your ruler, Mercury forms creative aspects with revolutionary Uranus and the karmic moon's north node. Your analytical mind is receiving intuitive downloads this week. Offers breakthrough thinking that combines practical application, so doing the thing with humanitarian vision. So good for kind of like empathetic social network or social enterprise in business, or helping your neighbour or family member, or helping yourself. It can allow you also to process information differently and trust unusual ideas that may seem random but are divinely guided. Libra, your ruler Venus forms a harmonious aspect with Saturn, Neptune and Pluto, and this creates a week of stable yet transformative relationship energy. It supports mature approaches to relationships with both practical commitment and spiritual vision. It's perfect for conversations about commitment or bringing structure to creative projects. Scorpio, the moon leaves via combustion, the burning way, in your sign midweek, offering emotional clarity after intensity. This transit, marks a significant shift in your emotional world. After, you may have felt like your emotions were in a pressure cooker, everything just so intense, now you can experience a refreshing reset or just feel more relaxed, and this allows for clearer intuitive connection and reduced emotional reactivity. Sagittarius, the full moon in your sign coincides exactly with a void of course moon, creating a powerful energy portal. This rare spiritual double feature activates your quest for meaning while simultaneously at the same time, creating an astrological pause button, so it can feel like a brake and accelerator situation, but it's perfect for releasing limiting beliefs and connecting with your highest path through meditation or journaling. Capricorn, the moon enters your sign on the 11th as Jupiter makes its exact contraparallel on that day too, and this allows, and Pluto's in Capricorn, right? So this allows you to be more emotionally grounded and also, transform things in a grounded way. And your sign's practical energy helps channel expansive spiritual insights into concrete steps and day-to-day routines, right? So use this time to question authority, structures, routine, habits, and organize your feelings into actionable steps. So Aquarius, the North Node in your sign receives harmonious aspects from both Mercury and the Sun, and this activates your role in collective evolution. So you can just feel more empathetic, wanting to work in groups, or just open more to the collective visions and consciousness. It ultimately aligns, joins up humanitarian vision with both emotional intelligence, which is represented by Mercury in Cancer, and conscious identity, the Sun in Gemini. And by following these innovative ideas that connect personal growth with community advancement, you can experience peace this week and just a feeling of doing something that matters. Pisces, both Saturn and Neptune in your sign receive beautiful aspects from Venus, creating a blend, a mixture of structure and spirituality. This astrological configuration helps you structure your dreams without losing their magic, perfect for spiritual practices that honour the body or bring in more beauty into sacred spaces. So in terms of your one-line mantras, affirmations for this week, Aries, I heal my deepest wounds by facing them with courage rather than avoidance. Taurus, I'm building beauty that lasts by mixing earthly pleasures with spiritual depth. Gemini, my curious mind is aligning with my future self through innovative, a fresh approach to communication. Cancer, my emotional intelligence is the key to unlocking my highest destiny path. Leo, I reclaim my power by expressing myself authentically despite my past wounds and scars, and imbalances. Virgo, I trust the unusual ideas appearing now as they connect practical solutions with humanitarian purpose. Libra, I create relationships that balance practical commitment with magical connection. Scorpio, as emotional intensity clears, I am open to the newfound clarity and intuitive power. Sagittarius, I release limiting beliefs under my full moon. Pause to recognize the expanding truth. Capricorn, I transform questioning of authority into practical steps toward authentic power. Aquarius, my innovative ideas are not random, but divinely aligned with collective evolution. Pisces, I structure my dreams without losing their magic, finding the sacred in everyday life. So ultimately, This week, the universe is literally begging us, supporting us to go deeper than we've ever been before. Will you? Is the only question you need to ask yourself. So yeah, ask yourself what hidden truth or truths need to be exposed right now. Which taboo topics do you need to confront? You know, the emotions you repress, the secrets you hide or are afraid to confront, you know. How can you make changes in your life slowly and steadily, and, you know, get out of your comfort zone at a pace that's good for you, you know. So yeah, so now I'm just going to talk about the content or the creative focus you may want to place your energy on this week. So this week's energy is absolutely a chef's kiss for deep dive and deep exposés, uncovering hidden truths and sharing research that transforms understanding, but make sure you keep it factual. It's good for creating deep dive documentaries or other content, or watching or listening to these content that expose corruption, conspiracy theories or power structures, routine and habits that need dismantling. Jupiter gives us the astrological permission to confront the uncomfortable. So any content that dives deep, you know, maybe sharing your own personal journey or writing about a secret you've kept deep down, processing your childhood wounds, content about wealth redistribution or financial revolution, investigating hidden truths about psychological, emotional and spiritual growth, and exploring shadow work and psychological transformation content, producing spiritual content about death, rebirth themes and karmic lessons, sharing stories of other people and their radical change and transformation, creating or consuming, listening to educational content with an edge, teachings that challenges conventional thinking and ways of being, you know. So in Vedic terms, Guru Jupiter in Gemini is confronting Yama, Pluto, you know, and it creates the perfect energy for content or doing the things that expand your mind while transforming perspectives, how you think about things, how you do things. People can be especially open, receptive to content that helps them understand power structure, routines, habits while expanding knowledge. Keep it intellectually stimulating but with transformative depth, but keep it fun as well, you know, even though surface level content won't really hit during this transit, but also keep the depth light as well. Ultimately, this contraparallel creates a unique tension. Jupiter wants to broadcast and expand while Pluto demands secrecy and control. We can just be hungry for content that help us navigate major life changes while maintaining optimism. Content that helps people through their darkest struggles, or listening to content that will help you go through whatever you're going through right now and help you feel more balanced, you know, out of your darkest struggle into your greatest wisdom. And you can just ask yourself this week, what hidden truths am I uniquely positioned to illuminate or understand in terms of content creation, you know, that can help others genuinely level up, transform their lives, you know. So now I'm just going to talk about the day-to-day aspects that are influencing us this week on that 6th of July. So we got Venus making a sextile to Saturn at 9:43 a.m. The moon enters Scorpio at 11:13 a.m. and Venus's sextile to Saturn happens when Venus is in Taurus and Saturn's in Pisces. Venus makes a sextile to Neptune, and this happens when Neptune's in Pisces, and this is exact at 3:46 p.m. The Sun makes a semi-square to Uranus, and this is exact at 8:30 p.m. and the Sun's in Gemini and Uranus is in Taurus. So ultimately, today is a day of spiritual grounding and creative tension. A Venus sextile Saturn, where we got Venus in her own sign, and Saturn in the mystical waters of Pisces, where the Queen of Pleasure meets the astrological taskmaster in perfect harmony, you know. So it allows us to build lasting beauty, be practical about it and be more practically sensual, and practical sensuality meets spiritual discipline. So good for, sticking to routine, especially when it comes to, learning new things spiritually, empowering yourself, meditation, yoga, research, whatever, while also adding a touch of beauty to it, and our affections can be steady and grounded. So good for repairing problems in intimate relationships, good for self-partnered people to do a date night. It's good for, even if you're the most practical type and you're not the overly romantic side, you could even be more romantic than normal and displease your partner, and Saturn in Pisces helps us structure our dreams and spiritual desires without losing ourselves this week. Ultimately, it allows us to make our dreams real if we're willing to put the work in. So it brings a mature approach to relationships and finances, helps us to mix practical commitment with spiritual vision, helps us find beauty in discipline and structure, routines. It helps us build love that lasts with solid boundaries, but negatively we may feel too serious about pleasure, a risk of overthinking sensual experiences. It also can just make us delay gratification unnecessarily, just being too kind of restrictive with ourselves. Yes, we must have discipline, but also we must have pleasure as well. Balance is key. The best use of this energy is to have conversations about commitment, financial planning, and use our heart, and bring structure to our creative projects, and create something that requires both patience and sensuality, fun and seriousness. Venus makes a sextile to Neptune, and this, with them both being in their home size, Neptune's in Pisces, right? It's like having our feet on the ground while our heart floats in spiritual bliss. It creates a bridge between material comfort and spiritual connection, and our capacity to find the sacred in the ordinary, to find the spiritual in a smile or anything day to day. It improves our artistic inspiration. It gives a more spiritual approach to relationships. We can be more compassionate in the expression of our wills and our values. You like being firm to our boundaries, but in a nice way. But negatively, we can idealize relationships, ignore red flags. There can be a confusion between what we want and what we need, and we can escape through material comforts, our comfort zone, rather than do the sadder work and the deep work. Jupiter's contraparallel to Pluto, which is influencing us this week, wants us to do, right? The best use of this energy is to express our highest values and allow romance to flow effortlessly through us, allowing ourselves to be enchanted, get lost in the moment a little bit while keeping our feet on solid ground, and honour the needs of the body through mindful eating or yoga or Tai Chi. The Sun semi-square to Uranus adds to the motivation of this week, but we can be restless in our need for change as well. Our conscious mind can seek variety and information, Gemini, while feeling friction with Uranus's need to revolutionise, change our values and resources, which is what Uranus in Taurus wants us to do in a practical way. So it adds to our intuitive feelings, flashes of brilliant insight, gives us the courage to express our ideas and break free from mental ruts. It allows us to change and be open to innovative new next level approaches to communication, but negatively adds to the mental restlessness and distraction. We can be impulsive in our words and behaviours, and it brings tension between our need for security, staying in our comfort zone, and change, right? So we should use this energy, especially used for writing, learning something unexpected, or having conversations that shake up our thinking. And with the moon entering Scorpio, when in a gibberish phase, our emotional intensity builds towards a breakthrough. So the moon in Scorpio is giving us that power to go forward, right? And of course, Pluto rules Scorpio, so things can be, a bit intense, but it can also help us to go to the depths we need to this week. On the 7th of July, Venus makes a quintile to the Moon's North Node, and Venus is in Taurus and the Moon's North Node is in Aquarius, and this is exact at 4:53 a.m. Venus makes a trine to Pluto, and this is exact at 9:43 a.m. today. The Moon leaves via combustor at 5:25, and the Moon enters void of course at 10:30, right? So Venus's quintile to the Moon's North Node allows us to follow our life direction and path and come up with creative solutions to our problems and be creative in a nice, subtle way. It allows us to manifest financial abundance with spiritual purpose, and we can just some of you may meet someone new or come across some information that can help you with your creative growth, you know. Ultimately, this energy is a divine opportunity to align our values and relationships with our true needs and the needs of our higher self, our soul, our higher consciousness, you know. Venus is trine to Pluto, brings regenerative, renewal, power to our relationships, money and self-worth. So, you know, supporting the main aspect of this week, allowing us to question our views on money and relationships and self-worth and change them when need be. It allows us to bond deeply emotionally with others and ourselves. It also helps with our financial transformations, improving our finances and resource management, you know, looking at how you can use your time more better, you know, setting up a new bedtime routine, exercise routine, you know, whatever routine you need to set up, good for that stuff. It allows us to experience the intensity of Pluto but in a balanced way, right? Allowing ourselves to explore and express ourselves with creative and psychological depth. We can feel drawn to experiences that are both pleasurable and profound. Shallow, surface level connections won't cut it today. We are craving real connection, you know. And as I said, the Moon leaves via combustion. I talked about this a bit earlier. When the Moon leaves via combustion, we can have more emotional clarity, replacing confusion. We can have a better intuitive connection and psychic receptivity, and we can just feel less anxious and less emotionally reactive, you know. We can just be more chilled out. So yeah, some questions we can ask ourselves today is, how can we work with Venus's North Node energy to align ourselves with our artistic creative expression and align that with our soul's purpose and higher needs? In what relationships or financial matters could you benefit from changing things, you know, using Venus's Pluto's energy? And how will you use the Moon's freedom release from via combustion to process emotions that have been simmering, bubbling, being ignored beneath the surface, you know? On the 8th of July, we have Mars making a sister quadrant to Chiron. This is exact at 4:36 a.m. and Mars is in Leo and Chiron's in Aries. We got Mercury making a quintile to Uranus at 2:58 p.m. Mercury is in Cancer and Uranus is in Taurus, and the Moon enters Sagittarius at 10:46. Mercury's sister quadrant to Chiron allows us again to face past wounds around self-expression, and we can find this suddenly demanding our attention, and this can be frustrating as asserting ourselves can trigger old pain, but see it as an astrological push to heal through confident action, not avoidance. This aspect is basically the universe saying we need to talk about how you handle anger, assertion and your inner warrior energy. The Leo Mars wants brave, dramatic expression, while Chiron in Aries emphasizes where you've been wounded around your very identity and right to exist. It's giving feel the fear and do it anyway energy. Your healing journey requires facing those moments when your confidence was shattered and reclaiming your personal power, especially in situations that require self-assertion and courage. Mercury's quintile to Uranus allows us to increase our intelligence and perception, you know, and practically implement any ideas that come up right about now. So we can have breakthroughs in our communication that feel nurturing and revolutionary. It's elite energy for us to think outside of the box while still honouring our true needs and feelings. So Mercury in Cancer helps us process information through emotional intelligence, and Uranus in Taurus disrupts material stability in the most productive way. So helping us not, think so much about how much money this can make or think about the financial things, but think more about how we can feel emotionally fulfilled at this time. Not ignore the practicalities of budgeting and all of that, but seeing beyond that, seeing beyond just meeting our material needs and meeting the needs of our emotion. It allows us to look at our behaviours, our relationships, our family from fresh angles, and we can discover technological solutions to make our home life more efficient. This energy supports intuitive downloads that connect heart and mind in surprising ways. So the moon enters Sagittarius, giving us an emotional vibe check, bringing a breath of fresh air to our feelings. We can be more optimistic and adventurous in our emotions, and it allows us to replace intense self-reflection, deep thinking with being more philosophical, more chilled out. So that's good because we've got a lot of intense energy this week. It allows us to have that emotional freedom to explore new things. Spiritual insights can feel more accessible and flowing if we just chill out a bit instead of just investigating things. I did say at the beginning of this week, investigate, tap into the depth, but this energy just gives us a breather, and the spiritual insights, getting them in this way can feel more accessible and flowing to us. We may feel drawn to bigger truths and distant limits after dealing with the heavier energies of the day and this week, so it just gives us a chance to chill out and see the bigger picture of what you've been processing with the Jupiter and contra Pluto energy this week. So it's perfect astrological timing to confront wounds, Mars and Chiron right, then find innovative solutions to them, Mercury and Uranus, and finally expand into the new emotional area, turf territory, represented by the Sagittarius moon. And we can reflect on, how you may have been letting the fear of rejection limit your authentic self-expression. A lot of the time we've tried to be ourselves and been rejected for that, so it can be hard to be ourselves, right? Think about what brilliant ideas are bubbling up that combine emotional intelligence with innovative new approaches that you can use to solve your problems. Think about what areas of your life you may be seeking more adventure and freedom in, and ask yourself what would happen if you allow yourself to be wounded and powerful in the same moment. Because a lot of the time we just think we can only be one thing at a time, but no, I believe that we are never healed, we're always healing, and this is not to stay in that territory of victim mode or none of that. It's just to recognise that some days you're going to have good days and some days you're going to have bad, because life will always be life, and you let people in, you fall in love, the lover goes, you get a job, you lose the job, you form connections, someone leaves their physical body and dies. Life always brings something, so we just have to prepare ourselves for that. On the 9th of July, nothing happens. Oh my goodness, imagine that, nothing happens. That's a rare day, hey? And on the 10th of July, the moon enters void, of course, and then we've got a full moon in Sagittarius, which I talked about a bit earlier this week. And if you want to know all about it, check out the separate special in the playlist. So ultimately, the full moon in Sagittarius is happening when the moon goes void, of course, as I said, this week. So it allows us to connect our conscious mind with our deeper quest for meaning, and it activates our higher wisdom, and at the same time it wants us to seek wisdom, but also wants us to pause and reflect and take a breather and process it before moving on, so we can experience spiritual breakthroughs. It's a perfect time to release limiting beliefs that no longer serve you. It can give you big picture clarity when you think about the bigger picture of doing things. You may think, I want to change career, but you don't have the skills to do that. So the bigger picture of that, you would have to look at courses, maybe buy some books or listen to podcasts, or start watching things online, because you can learn everything online, but we still need the textbooks and to get the holistic learning for most things, right? For most things. But then if you want to learn something new, but you've already got a job, you've got to pay the bill, so you may have to change your routine. Maybe you can't binge watch TV shows until 3 a.m. anymore. You may have to go to bed at 1 a.m. or 10 a.m. No, yeah, at 10 p.m. or 1 a.m. or 9 p.m., you know. So just thinking about the bigger picture of the things you say that you want in your life and what lifestyle changes you need to make to get that done, you know. It brings a feeling that we can have freedom from the things that are holding us back, and we can have a divine connection to our highest path. This can help us get that clarity we need to move forward, you know. But on the shadow side, we can, you know, just feel spiritually or informationally burnt out, you know, because we're taking in too much information with the research that Jupiter conjured power out to Pluto wants us to do this morning, to research, go depth and depth and depth. Yeah, go deep, but remember to chill out. Balance, as I said, is the key. We may risk spiritual bypassing, which is using spiritual and intellectualizing and stuff like that to not deal with our emotional wounds, you know, because it's not about escaping our emotions, it's about learning to process them and deal with them and not let them overrun our life. To balance the emotional and the intellect, right, our psychological, emotional, spiritual, financial and physical needs, to make sure all 5 areas are balanced, you know, to avoid escaping our responsibility in any one area. We can also be too honest, too blunt with our truth bombs, you know. You and other people may say things and that can hurt us. So yeah, tell the truth, as I said, but you know, a lot of the time it's not what we say, it's how we say it. And no, we don't have to always beat around the bush, as we say in the UK, dress things up and people please, but sometimes, you know, we can get our points across without hurting other people's feelings and respecting our own and their boundaries, you know. So ultimately the best way to use this full moon energy is to journal about our spiritual journey, thinking about what needs completion, ending. Meditate during the exact full moon time, which is 9:37 p.m. If you're in the UK, search for your time, you know. If you don't live in the UK, release outdated belief systems with ritual or visualization. Connect with teachers or mentors, but avoid making firm commitments. Plan your next adventure without finalizing details. So you can ask yourself, how have your beliefs about what's possible expanding over the past 6 months? What truths are you finally ready to acknowledge under this illuminating Sagittarius energy? Where in your life are you chasing external wisdom when your inner guru wisdom already knows the answer? And it's just asking us to ask ourselves, are we living our most authentic truth and life and self-expression? And if not, why not, and how can we do so, you know? On the 11th of July, Venus makes a semi-sextile to Jupiter at 1:52 a.m. and Venus is in Taurus and Jupiter's in Gemini. Jupiter's conjure parallel to Pluto, which is the aspect governing us, influencing us this week, is exact at 2:56 a.m. The moon enters Capricorn and Mercury makes a biquintile to the moon's north node, and the moon's north node is in Aquarius, Mercury is in Cancer, and this is exact at 8:51 p.m. So Venus's semi-sextile to Jupiter again allows us and pushes us towards abundance without us being overwhelmed with this energy as we go into the weekend. It wants us to, you know, just have a bit more pleasure in our relationships and treat ourselves a little with what we see as comforting, but without staying too much in the comfort zone. It brings the tension between what we value, Venus, and what we are learning, Jupiter. It causes just enough friction to make things interesting, and we just have to, you know, just try and soft launch. You know, you may want to spice things up in the bedroom or change something in your relationship or in your life, your career, or any other partnerships, business strategy with your business partner. You know, soft launch the idea, you know, use nice, softly energy without being too people pleasing, and this is the best approach rather than brave, big, bold decorations. This is how you can get what you want, you know, and it helps us to expand our mind and socialise, so good energy for socialising as well. The moon entering Capricorn brings that grounding energy we need, adding to the grounding of Pluto and Capricorn, right? It wants us to focus on our responsibility, our routine, you know, and it wants us to, and it kind of goes against the Venus semi-sextile energy, because it can make some of you too practical in how you express emotions, but this can be good because Venus is semi-sextile to Jupiter, where it can make us get carried away, because Jupiter expands everything, just how we can get carried away with the depth, because Jupiter's contra-powering Pluto this week. We can get carried away with the love bombing or ignoring our responsibilities. So this is good. It grounds our affections, it grounds our spending, because we could overspend, right, and overindulge. So it brings grounding. It allows us to use our intuition as a practical tool for building solid foundations, solid routines into our life. But it can also give emotional project manager energy, which is good because it can help us organize our feelings and spiritual insights into actionable steps, but it can make us emotionally cold and detached from expressing our love and intimacy. So finding that balance is important again, and it allows us to manifest our inner world, what we feel, what we want, into material reality if we're prepared to make a plan and work towards meeting the needs of that plan over the coming months, years. Mercury is by quintile to the moon's north node, allows us to communicate what we really want, are the needs of our soul, our higher purpose, creatively and in a way that's understandable not only to ourselves but to others as well. We can have dreams or intuitive downloads about our spiritual direction. It allows us to change our thought patterns that can advance our soul mission. It creates specialized talents and genius level insight, so we can just awaken to gifts that we haven't used for years, or gifts we didn't know that we have that could help us create a side hustle or help us find a solution to a problem. It can rewire our thinking to align with our highest purpose and highest good, right? And we may receive unusual ideas of communication that seem random but are actually perfectly aligned with our spiritual evolution growth. And we should trust those where did that come from moments, as they're leading us towards our growth and destiny. So we can just think about how we can sort of like be open to taking practical steps towards our growth, starting or continuing that work. What belief systems or power structures, routine habits has the Jupiter-Pluto aspect been challenging in your life? You can ask yourself, in what ways is your communication style evolving, changing, or how can you change it to better express yourself to help your relationships, and what would happen if you allow your emotional intelligence to guide you in your approach to community and humanitarian efforts and repairing what needs repairing in your relationship and just to life in general. So on the 12th of July, the sun makes a trine to the moon's north node. This is exact at 1:56 a.m. and the moon enters void of course at 8:45 p.m. So the sun's trine to the moon's north node as we close down the week. It's a universal green light to level up, to change, which has been the sort of like vibe of this week, and it can just create an astrological flow state where your conscious identity perfectly align and vibes with your soul's evolutionary growth glow path, so the path to your best self. If you follow this energy, use this energy wisely, you can feel more connected to that. It adds to us being able to authentically express ourselves and have breakthrough about the steps we need to take forward, and creative solutions to old problems appear effortlessly. So yeah, on the sadder side though, it can create FOMO if you're not open to these aligned opportunities, getting outside of your comfort zone this week. Also, you can just feel pressure to make big life decisions quickly, and as I said, Jupiter's expanding quite a lot this week, so just try and chill out a bit. Remember, we all grow at our own pace, and sometimes for some of you it's just about writing down the ideas and the insights you have this week rather than acting on them, because we don't want to get into a stage where our temporary confidence leads us to overcommit and overpromise, and then, you know, next week we can't keep our promises, right? And we can just be intellectually arrogant with this air sign combo as well, this energy. So we just need to watch out for the sun's trine to the moon's north node, sun in Gemini, moon's north node in Aquarius, right? So we just have to try and be as grounded as we can, but we also have to remember that the path forward requires leaving comfortable situations behind. For some of you, getting outside of your comfort zone, you know. So ultimately this week is good for meditation, spiritual reflection, diving deep, right? Trying to reduce your emotional reactivity and, you know, breaking your routine in the right way, but not being too down on yourself if you can't do that, you know. And ultimately this week you can ask yourself, how is your current identity preparing you for your future self, which is represented by the sun in Gemini, current identity, and future self north node in Aquarius, you know. And which communication patterns this week are helping you evolve towards your purpose, and which ones are stopping you from growing, you know. And just try and notice how you feel this week. Check in with yourself, check in with your emotions, you know. So yeah, that's the end of the weekly scopes from the 6th to the 12th of July. I'm Amani, your holistic astrological karmic life coach. Take care and see you next time.